who has listened carefully to the arguments and counter-arguments and remains or becomes a convinced Christian. What else can one say? But to your deepest commitments and convictions be true as you engage in dialogue with your fellow philosophers on philosophical issues. Be a Christian philosopher. Show those who are of other persuasions where Christian thinking goes. Maybe something will turn up that they can appropriate in their own way. If the philosophical enterprise on this way of understanding it does not aim at Kant rationality, what does it aim at? I would say it aims at dialogic rationality. But you'll have to gather from the term what I mean by it. I'm not going to explain it on this occasion. Throughout his career, Al has been a Christian philosopher, aiming not at Kant rationality, but what I call dialogic rationality. His work in its totality is a paradigm of what that is. To what extent has the paradigm been influential on philosophers in general, how philosophers in general understand the philosophical enterprise? That's hard to tell, since we analytic philosophers, are curiously inarticulate when it comes to explaining our understanding of the epistemology of philosophy. But it's my impression that the ideal of Kant rationality is dying. My Harvard professors would have looked askance at the idea of Christian philosophy, humanist philosophy, feminist philosophy, or any other such perspectival philosophy. They would have dismissed them all as different versions of biased philosophy. Good philosophy is generically human philosophy. It's my impression that the recognition that good philosophy comes in various adjectival or perspectival forms is well on the way to being the common self-understanding of the analytic philosopher. I close. I grew up in Minnesota, where hyperbole was the primal rhetorical evil. Not one among the rhetorical tropes at one's disposal. On every pencil box, on every inkwell, were written the words, "Thou shalt not exaggerate." In the remarks I've made today, I've tried to be faithful to my Minnesota upbringing. Philosophy in general, and Christian philosophy in particular, is very different now from what it was then. And you, Al, my good friend of a good many years, you will notice I did not say my old friend, my good friend of a good many years, have played a leading role in making it so. It's my own view that philosophy is in a much better state now than it was then, and that Christian philosophy in particular is in a much better state. So when I say that you have played a leading role in making the field what it is today, I mean those words not just as description, but as an expression of honor and gratitude. I speak for everybody here when I say that we are grateful for the extraordinary contribution you have made to our field. And as for me personally, I'm deeply grateful for the personal and philosophical friendship that you and I have enjoyed over these 60 years. It's been a fascinating journey. Much of it over terrain hitherto unknown, never before explored, but now, thanks to your work, familiar. Some of us thought this day would never come, when you would voluntarily retire, but it has. And so, my good friend, may you fare well in this new stage of your life.
So Mike wanted me to point out that this paper, too, is available in the back. Is that where it is? And so those of you who want to get copies of it can. Theoretically, we have until 5. It's not clear that there's anything to object to here, really. But I thought that if there was anyone who wanted to offer remarks close to Nick's paper on sort of the significance of Al's work in recent philosophy and the like, this would be an appropriate time. And if not, we can just end it early. Al? I also told Al he might have a chance to respond.
Speak about the significance of his work.
Not about his own work.
Well, it's been a long day and a long conference, and I'll be brief. I don't propose to comment on the significance of my philosophy. But there are just a couple of things I wanted to say. When Andrew asked me if I wanted to say something at this session, I was inclined to say, no, I really don't have anything to say. I mean, it's been a wonderful conference and so on, but I've got nothing to add. But there are a couple of things I do want to say. First of all, I want to say something about Nick, my friend Nick from 60 years ago, when he was 18 and I was 17, when we met, and we've been friends ever since. Nick's contribution to Christian philosophy has been absolutely enormous. It's been particularly in virtue of his wide-ranging talents and wide-ranging erudition that this contribution. I mean, he spoke, for example, of political philosophy and pointed out that I'd never said a word about political philosophy. Fortunately enough, no doubt. But that's certainly not true of Nick. He's written on aesthetics, he's written on political philosophy, he's written on philosophy of education. He once decided that philosophy of education needed some help, and I think he was quite right. It did need some help, probably still does. So in about a year, Nick read and mastered and refuted all the philosophy of education there was, and then wrote his own. This kind of enormous, wide-ranging learning and ability of his is most impressive and something I've always admired and have myself wished for. So it's been a wonderful pleasure for me over all these years, a privilege and a pleasure over these last 60 years to be associated with my friend Nick, to have worked together with him, to have been a co-worker, to have been a co-conspirator in some ways. It's been great. I do also have to mention a couple of other people along the very same lines. My former professor, colleague, friend, William Alston, who died recently during this past year, is one. I'd also like to mention Eleanor Stump, who is here, and Peter Van Enwagen, who is here, and Richard Swinburne, whom I don't see, but has at any rate been here. Oh, there he is, right, yes. I could say something of the same about these people, not that I've had as much close personal contact with them, but I have the same kind of admiration for them, the same kind of gratitude for their contribution to this whole project of defending and advancing Christian belief in a philosophical fashion. When I first saw that a conference was organized to celebrate, I mean, I could go on here. There are many others I could and probably should mention, but once I get started, I wouldn't know where to stop. So I'll stop there. When I first learned that a conference was organized to celebrate my retirement, I was feeling, I was a bit resentful. I mean, it's like they're saying, well, finally we're getting rid of this geezer, you know? So, and true, I've been at this for a long time, but it seemed to me, I asked myself, do we really need a 3-day celebration of my stopping, doing this sort of thing, of my leaving? But of course, I'm enormously grateful to Kelly and to Mike Gray for organizing this conference.